Welcome to today's Explainer. We are about to jump into a seriously fascinating journey into the very architecture of reality, life, and intelligence. We're exploring a pretty groundbreaking hypothesis developed by informational physics or UIPO researcher, inventor, and author Kevin L. Brown. It's called the Calista Loop. And by the way, Calista means most beautiful, which makes sense when you see how elegant this is. The core question here is massive. Is there a universal mathematical blueprint that explains exactly how a unified reality breaks apart, forms complex life, and then ultimately returns to unity? It is a huge, mind-bending concept, but don't worry, we're going to break it all down simply. Okay, let's run through our agenda for today. We'll hit the mystery of 12, the core research question, the 12 steps of reality, landmarks and interpretations, the compression test, and finally, falsification and the future.
Section 1. The Mystery of 12. Let's look at why this number just keeps showing up.
So as I mentioned, the name of this hypothesis, Calista, comes from a word translating to most beautiful. But, and this is key, in a scientific context, we aren't talking about a beautiful painting or piece of music. We're talking about mathematical beauty. This means the system has perfect structural economy. It literally has no unnecessary fluff, minimal redundancy, and every single step serves a highly specific, totally unique function. It's as simple as it can possibly be, but no simpler.
Now, why 12 steps, right? Throughout human history, the number 12 shows up constantly. You see it in the 12 links of Buddhist-dependent arising, the Babylonian and Hellenistic zodiacs, the Mesoamerican layered heavens, and even in modern metaphysical density models. But listen, here is something absolutely crucial you need to take away from this explainer. We have to strictly view these historical examples as cultural context. They are fascinating, for sure, but they are not scientific evidence for the Calista Loop. We're definitely not using ancient astrology or theology to build a modern physics model here.
Moving on to Section 2, the core research question. Let's look at how we actually derive these 12 steps.
And this brings us right to Kevin L. Brown's central thesis from his work at Creation Unified. Can we mathematically map the entire journey from simple, featureless unity all the way out to complex, intelligent life and then back to unity, deriving exactly 12 steps without just guessing the number from the start? That's the real research question. Can these 12 positions be mathematically proven as necessary, completely independent of all those ancient myths we just talked about? In this loop model, every arrow represents an operation that changes the state, and every box is a completely unique condition.
Section 3, the 12 steps of reality. Let's actually map out this formal architecture.
All right, let's walk through the first half of this cycle, starting from absolute zero. Position 1 is convergent. Think of this as pure unity. But to get reality moving, a transition has to happen. Differentiation basically breaks that unity apart. This lands us at position 2, differentiated. We now have distinct, separate parts. To move forward from there, a clear boundary has to form around those parts. That brings us to position 3, bounded. We now have a defined self and other. Next, these bounded items start to interact, creating a coupling, which puts us at position 4, relational. Things are connected. But a static connection isn't enough. The system has to start moving and evolving over time. This movement gives us position 5, dynamical. The system is actively changing. Eventually, that wild, changing pattern actually settles down into something reliable, which brings us to position 6, persistent. We finally have a stable, lasting form.
So, let's see how this builds in the second half. From our stable form, a massive shift occurs. The system starts doing internal work to survive. This is position 7, endogenously maintained. Now, endogenous just means from within. So this literally means the system is doing internal work to preserve its own life. Next, to survive better, it starts encoding information about the outside world. That's position 8, representational. It's perceiving things. But then it goes a step further and starts looking at its own internal data, thinking about its own thoughts. This brings us to position 9, recursive. We have reflection and high-level intelligence here. Next up, all these complex, reflecting parts have to be brought together into one functional unit, giving us position 10, integrated. The system is now a single whole. When that whole manages to align perfectly without any internal conflict, we hit position 11, coherent, perfect harmony. And finally, that highly coherent system starts its return journey, landing at position 12, reconvergent. The cycle closes, bringing everything back into a renewed state of unity, totally ready to begin again.
Section 4, landmarks and interpretations. Let's see how this maps to the real world.
You might be wondering, how does this abstract math actually apply to our universe? Well, we can anchor these abstract steps to real-world landmarks. For example, position 5, the dynamical state, maps perfectly to the Big Bang, that rapidly evolving chaotic early universe. Position 6, the persistent state, maps to the formation of stable matter, stars and planets. Position 7, the maintained state, marks the emergence of biological life, because life actively maintains itself. And position 9, recursive, maps to higher intelligence and self-awareness. But here is a vital warning. Kevin Brown explicitly states these are just interpretive mappings to help us humans understand the math. They are absolutely not the mathematical definitions themselves. The math stands entirely on its own, with or without humans or the Big Bang to explain it.
And the exact same rule applies to spiritual teachings. Some modern metaphysical models, like Bashar density teachings, talk about moving from physical separation back up to spiritual unity. We need to explicitly clarify that any comparisons to these teachings are just structural analogies. They represent moving from separation back to unity, sure, but they are never ever used as scientific proof for the Calista Loop hypothesis.
Section 5. The compression test. Time for an irreducibility audit. This part brilliantly illustrates the rigorous scientific nature of the paper. Why 12 steps? Why not 10 or 11? Could we just simplify this whole shebang? To answer that, Brown performed a compression test, or an irreducibility audit. Simply put, if we try to force this 12-step loop into a 10 or 11-step loop by merging categories, the whole system just breaks down. We lose vital diagnostic data. For instance, if you merge persistent and maintained, your math can no longer tell the difference between a rock, which just persists, and a living cell, which actively maintains itself. If you merge representational and recursive, your math suddenly can't tell the difference between a simple thermostat sensing temperature and a human brain thinking about its own existence. So all 12 positions are strictly mathematically necessary to tell the full story of reality. There's another fascinating layer to this cycle too. What happens at the very end when it loops back to unity? The hypothesis actually offers two possibilities. The first is a basic loop closure, where the system returns exactly to the universal convergence set it started from, resetting and repeating. Just a simple loop. But the second is an enriched spiral closure. Now, this is a much stronger hypothesis, where the system returns to convergence, but it actually retains the structural history and information it learned along the journey. It doesn't just repeat, it spirals upward, learning and growing with every single cycle.
Section 6. Falsification and the future. How do we test this?
To be a true scientific hypothesis, it can't just sound cool on paper. There must be strict rules on how it can be proven wrong. Brown presents rigorous falsification parameters to ground this explainer deeply in the scientific method. The Calista loop is proven false if 1. A position can be removed without losing predictive power. 2. If any two adjacent positions are proven mathematically identical. 3. If a simpler 10-step architecture actually performs better in tests. 4. If cross-domain mappings fail across physical and biological systems. And finally, number 5, if the model relies on human interpretations, like the Big Bang, to function. It literally must survive strict testing without relying on our human stories.
Which brings us to the end of our journey, and this final, highly important quote from researcher Kevin L. Brown. He doesn't claim to have proven all the secrets of the universe today. The Calista loop is an exciting, unresolved, open empirical research question for the future. It's a hypothesis just waiting to be tested in computational models and artificial intelligence. So I'll leave you with this provocative thought. If the math holds up to the rigorous tests of the scientific method over the coming years, could this 12-step mathematical sequence actually be the hidden source code of everything we know? Thanks so much for joining me to explore this incredible concept. Keep asking those big questions, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.